Hello, everybody. Welcome to my In Conversation with Olga Mecking. Olga's a bit of a sensation at the moment, and she's been on all the press all over the place, and I'm absolutely thrilled to have her here, and I hope that you will all learn something from this little superstar who I call the Rottweiler, because she is absolutely... When Olga's got the bit between her teeth and wants to do something, she makes it happen. She really is a role model for us all. So welcome, Olga.
Happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, I'm very happy that you're also my friend, so I haven't just...
It's even nicer.
Yes, which is really nice. So I'd like to... So Olga has written a book called Niksen, the Embracing the Dutch Art of Doing Nothing, which I have read and I was most impressed with. It has now been translated into how many languages, Olga?
15. So it's going to be published in 15 languages. And there are 3 English language editions, one for the Netherlands and Belgium, one for the UK and Commonwealth, and one for North America.
My goodness. And have you made extra money every single time they've sold those rights?
Yes.
Marvelous. So no wonder you are a role model. Well done. Congratulations. And it's all been such a whirlwind, hasn't it? From the very beginning till now. So perhaps you could start off by just introducing yourself a little bit and telling everybody about your writing journey. So where you started as a writer, and tell us when that was and where you are now.
Yeah. So I started writing a blog called The European Mama in 2011. After a woman called the police on me because my eldest daughter had a temper tantrum and she was crying and she wouldn't, well, anyway, this woman tried to be helpful and call the police. And that made me realize how isolated I was as a second-time mother, because I had that, my 2-year-old and a 6-week-old baby. So I was totally isolated and in a new country, and I wasn't doing so well really. So I started a blog, and so called it The European Mama, because I'm Polish, my husband is German, we live in the Netherlands, I have connections to France, and I have Jewish roots. So that kind of European Mama helped me kind of define what my identity is as a mother and as a multicultural person. And I wrote about raising kids with multiple languages. I wrote about living abroad. I wrote about travel and shared recipes. And with time, I loved blogging, but with time it's become so professionalized, and something that took me, maybe an hour of writing a post and loading it and putting it into WordPress, and that was it. I now had to prepare it for CEO, and I had to prepare the pictures for different social media channels, and something that would take an hour started taking longer and longer and longer. And I thought, okay, well, I love doing it, but I'm not making any money with it, and it's taking so much of my time. And I got into a few Facebook groups with other writers who were sharing. First I started writing for others people blogs, and then I got into those Facebook groups with other writers who were writing for all those big publications and magazines. And I realized, I didn't know the New York Times was looking for freelance writers. I thought, everything that is written in the New York Times and in a paper magazine and on the website, I thought that was usually written by their staff writers. And yes, a lot of it is, but they're also looking for people all over the place with interesting ideas. And I read some articles and I thought, some of it I could do as well. And so I started pitching magazines and publications and blogs that were paying, and that got me quite good bylines. And then I just started pitching bigger and bigger outlets. And yeah.
That's amazing. So how long ago was it that you started?
So my blog in 2011, so that was almost 10 years ago.
Yes, I know, but you went, and then when did you first get paid for something after
I,
that?
I think it was 2016, or
Okay.
yes, somewhere around that time. So that was the moment I started reaching out to bigger pubs and getting paid for my writing.
But that's amazing to go from 2016 to now, 2020, when you've got a book that has now been translated into 15 languages and you had a post on the New York Times that went viral. That is pretty amazing. And you do all that in a language that is not your first language. So I think that is incredible. So I know that from what you've just said, what really made me prick up my ears, well, what are these Facebook groups that you joined? What were the names of them?
There was one, it's no longer there, but it was called Beyond Your Blog, which was it was just for people who had blogs and wanted to go beyond that and write for bigger pubs. And the host would like she had a big website with interviews with editors from the New York Times, from
Mm,
Washington Post, but not just for the big ones, but also from editors from all kinds of places. And that was so helpful because it made
yeah.
me realize, yeah, they're actually looking for people like me, and that was really amazing to realize.
Yeah, so you started off then with, so have you got no writing qualifications or previous experience?
Well, yes and no. I haven't like my degree is not in journalism, but it is in language, and I used to work as a translator, and I speak 5 languages. And I see what I do now. It's also a sort of translation. It's not just words from one language into the other language, but it's concept from one culture to another. And a lot of what I do is a little bit like translating.
Yeah, translating ideas and thoughts and concepts to the page. Yeah, and you do that extremely well. So, how did you learn? You've written a number of books. So, could you just tell people what the books are that you've done?
I haven't actually written. I mean, Niksen was the first book that I've actually written, but I have published several books. So there's Dutch Up, which is an anthology of expert writing that I helped put together. There is One Chance in a Thousand, which is my grandfather's Holocaust memoir, which I translated into English from Polish into English, so that more people could read it. And yeah, I my blog is no longer live, but I put the content that I had on my blog into 2 ebooks. And one is about living abroad and traveling, and the other one is about parenting.
Hmm. Good for you. Good for you. Well, you say you haven't written a book before, but you did contribute to Dutched Up, which I have read, and I've also read One Chance in a Thousand. And you've also if you've also published the ebooks, then you've actually got quite a body of work, which is pretty amazing. Did that help you in getting publishers to want Niksen?
No, it was really the New York Times. It was really the viral New York Times article, because like sometimes self-publishing helps writers get a traditional publisher, but their book has to do really well and has to be noticed by Amazon and has to be noticed by agents and publishers for that to happen.
Hmm. Wow, so that's very interesting. So I want to go to talk about your voice, because having read Niksen, and I've read a lot of the things you've written, Olga, you have the most incredible natural voice in English.
Okay.
How on earth have you done that?
No, because it's funny that you say I have a voice, because for me every article is different, and I try to adapt to the voice of the publication I write for, because the New York Times is going to be very different from a humor site, which will be very different from a women's magazine. And I try to I read what they write on their site, and then I try to adapt that tone to my writing.
That's incredible that you do that in another language.
Oh well, yeah, yeah. So it's interesting because for me, it's weird to say, for me to say so, but I think I have a different relationship with English than someone who's just learned it at school, because my mother is basically as close to a native speaker as you can get. So she lived in the Netherlands for 8 years, and she went to an American school. So she basically speaks American English.
Ah.
And then and she would sometimes, not often, she would speak English to me, some like very not very often, but sometimes she would. And yeah, and I went to different language schools in Warsaw, where I'm originally from. And yeah, I think it's not about how this being my first language or my second or third. It's more about how long have you been using it and what for. And is because for now, right, English is my best language for writing. I don't think I'd be able at this point I'd be able to write the same things that I now write in English in Polish or German, which I should speak better. But because I've specialized so much on writing in English, it's really my best language for writing.
Hmm. Wow. Well, I am most impressed with your voice, particularly in Niksen, because it's so relatable and so accessible and so colloquial too. How much of that came from the editor, or is that all you?
No, well, she did, of course, smooth things over, because the first draft was, well, a mess.
Mm.
And yeah, but no, she kept my voice really, and I wrote it specifically in this way because I wanted to make a little bit of fun of wellness books that tell you, oh, you have to do this and this and this and that, and then you'll be amazing. But if you don't do it, you're a loser. And I've read so many of those books about parenting or wellness or health, and I tried to make fun of them a little.
Well, I've been most impressed with that. And you've answered my next question. Um, so, where have you had paid for article success? So we've got the New York Times, and what I know that these are personal questions, but I know my listeners will be interested. So, how much do you get paid for an article in the New York Times?
I've had 2 articles published there. One was an essay in the that was parenting related, and that was paid $500. And the Niksen, the case for doing nothing, was published in the smart living section, that paid $1 a word, which sounds like a lot until you realize that I had to interview 5 people, and an interview is about, when I do interviews, I do long interviews about an hour, which have to be transcribed, and which takes forever. And then I had to write an article, and then I had to, and the editor is very, he's very involved in the writing of the article, which is a good thing, but it's also more work.
Mm.
So if I put together all the hours I worked on that, it wouldn't be such a great hourly rate.
No, but that's a very important point, because I think a lot of people don't realize that it can take an awful long time to earn that amount of money, because the amount of research, when I look at your book, the book Niksen, you have done so much research,
Yes.
a phenomenal amount. And it looked to me like you were researching in all your languages
Yeah.
to get these incredible sources. Your bibliography goes on for page after page after page.
No, I enjoy doing that. I'm a little bit of a geek, so I like doing research, and I like languages. So that was actually the fun part. And sitting with those experts and asking them questions, I wasn't, oh my God, that's another interview. It was like, wow, I can talk to this person. For example, Marcus Reichel, the neurologist who discovered that we have a special network in our brain that's only gets involved when we do nothing. And I got to interview him. It was amazing.
Yeah, the research, I was blown away by the amount of research in your book. It really did impress me so much.
Yeah.
So Niksen, I know because you've told me how you came upon the idea of writing this book, but the listeners won't all know. So did you come across it because you were fascinated in the subject and you had a special love for it? Or did you notice there was a gap in the market? Or did it come in another way?
Well, a little bit of all of it, but mostly it was just I thought it was. I read about Niksen in a Dutch wellness magazine that I came across by coincidence, really, and I thought that was a great idea, and I would love to kind of bring it to a bigger audience. And I haven't, but I couldn't foresee how big it's going to become. I had no idea. I just thought this is a good story because that's what I do. I'm a writer who is looking for stories, and because I'm freelancer, um, that's all I've got.
Hmm. So it was about looking for a story. So the fact that there was a gap in the market, you didn't really know at the time.
No, like I knew there were articles about and books about the benefits of boredom or the benefits of laziness, for example, or the good sides of procrastinations. So all the things that were seen as a bad thing are now seen as a good thing, or it's maybe changing a little. And then what I also liked about Niksen is that the Dutch had one word for a concept that in other languages would require 2, 3, 4, 5 words. And it's so practical, and it fits really well with this tendency of the Dutch language where you can turn everything into a verb.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. It was funny because I know that they do that, and that's why it's Niksen. But it's really funny because at the end, each of your chapters, you've had what I call a roadmap. You've had the main body text, and you've had spotlights where you've spotlighted on something like procrastination.
Yeah.
And then at the end, you've had wrapping up, which I really like. And then right at the end, you've got Nix on this. And I think, why are you saying Nix on this, not Niksen on this? But of course, that's not grammatical because it's two Nicks.
You need, yeah. So
Yeah.
you do nothing. It's an infinitive, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah,
infinitive. It's
yeah.
an infinitive. Yeah, I really love that. It taught me a lot, and I've read about mindfulness, and I've read about meditation, and all these things. But you've did it in a different way, and this is a question that I haven't got on my list that I sent you. But this is what's come up to me after reading your book. In order to plan your book, sometimes I say to people, well, why not mind map it? And this was something that you came to having not already known a lot about it. How did you decide what to put in it? Because it seems to me like you did, what is Niksen, what isn't Niksen, how to do Niksen, how not to do Niksen, or when to do Niksen, when not to do Niksen. What is Niksen, what is the opposite of Niksen? It was as if you just kept looking at the opposites of these things, and that became your content. But was there something, did you have a better method than my rather flimsy explanation then?
I didn't think of that in this way, to be honest. I just had to write a proposal when I had to kind of describe what I wanted to include in the book. And the editor said, okay, 50,000 words, 8 chapters. So that's what I suggested. I was really interested in those contrasts. And I was trying to define what Niksen is. But then I found it very difficult because it's like negative space. You can only define it by lack of something.
Mm.
So then I started thinking, okay, but there's so many things that look like doing nothing but aren't. Like creative work, which is often, it's not just, the painting or the dancing or the writing that you do. It's also the sitting around or walking around and letting ideas kind of bump into each other in your head. And that's not work that's visible.
Mm. Yeah, I found it quite fascinating the way that I ended up understanding far more about Niksen and discovering that it's not exactly the same. And your shiny brown new couch, your new shiny brown couch, your brown shiny new couch, I love that. I was there in that part of that, the Nikseneers conversation about what is it, and your brown couch. And I love the way that every single chapter you start, I'm sitting on my couch and thought that was really clever, actually.
Yeah, that I think I only did that after I started writing the book. It wasn't planned like that, but then I realized that's kind of, it became this focal point of the book, right? This couch.
It did. And we all know your couch, and I can see you now snuggled into the corner of it. But you've really taught me a lot about it. So thank you. Thank you so much for doing that. I've asked you this, so we've asked you that. So what advice would you give to others who dream of what has just happened to you?
It's very tricky with books, especially, and if you want a self-published book, I think it only happened to me because I had this post go viral, and I've seen it happen to bloggers whose blog posts go viral or articles going viral at some places. So that really helps. And if you don't have that, well, I also know of writers who started, putting together, if it's nonfiction, they started putting together a proposal and sending it out to agents, because big traditional publishers, they won't accept non-agented submissions, sadly, but they don't. So you probably need an agent, and that requires lots of work. But then what I did also required lots of work, so there's no way around it, I think. So yeah, very tricky. But I think maybe, if you want a traditionally published book, yeah, so this is what it's going to take. Either you get a article or blog post go viral, or you query agents. Yeah, so sometimes people get book deals when they have a huge social media following. So there are all kinds of ways, but they all require lots of work.
Yeah,
So instead of looking at that goal of, I want to have a book published, try to kind of, work on your writing, or write about things that interest you and are fun to write about. And if not, consider self-publishing, because self-published books in some genres, self-published books are really doing well. And I know several self-published writers who have serious, amazing books out, fantasy series, all sorts of stuff. It's incredible. And those books are just as professionally edited and designed as traditionally published books, simply because the market is getting more and more professionalized when it's self-publishing. So I don't think you'll be able to, if you don't look for, who published the book, you wouldn't be able to say, just by holding the book, you wouldn't often be able to say what's self-published and what's traditionally published. And self-publishing is a very valid way to get a book out there.
Yeah, yes, thank you for that, as being somebody who runs a partner publishing company where we do help people to do that. So yes, it doesn't matter these days, providing there's a professional outcome. But what actually happened to you, which I'm not sure has been made clear, is that you wrote this article for the New York Times. It ended up going viral, and then the publishers contacted you.
Yes.
So can you tell us a little bit about how that progressed? Because you had them fighting over you.
Yeah, so I had a Dutch publisher, and I had interest from an agent in the UK. But as I said, this is because my article went viral, and suddenly everyone was writing about Niksen. So Time wrote about Niksen, and all sorts of places. Women's magazines were writing about Niksen. HuffPost, everyone. And I wrote my article in May, and then by July, Niksen was everywhere. And of course, people, some of those articles referred to my article, and it was all over social media, and agents and publishers actually actively looking for interesting new books and concepts and writers. So they're probably, browsing Twitter and seeing who's trending or what's trending, and trying to find a writer to write the next book for them.
I've lost what I was going to say now. It's completely gone out of my head. That's not very helpful, is it? Completely
No,
forgot what I
so
was going to.
it was interesting to have the publisher interested in the agent, because that's two very different paths, right?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
so in the end, I went with the publisher thinking that at least I have someone wanting to publish the book, and then I had my book. And they had they said they had a very good foreign rights team that would sell rights to other publishers around the world.
Ah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, so that was a very, very good choice, one I'm very happy with. Um, but yeah, an agent has other, they have other benefits. So they would probably be the go between me and the publisher. And if there are some conflicts or frictions, they would kind of take it on themselves. And I would probably get more help with the proposal, because the proposal was, it was very basic, simply because it was such a timely book and it had to get out now. So they had me write the proposal and the book very quickly. And so having an agent would also have been nice.
Yes, I can see that. I remember what my question was now. It was what the other thing is that your initial article came out in May 2019.
Yes.
And the book came out a year or less than a year later.
Yeah.
That is phenomenal, isn't it? What speed. You must have worked like a, I don't know what,
Yeah.
a Trojan.
Yeah. No, it's I had very little time to write the book. And you mentioned the research. I think the research actually helped, because it gave me content to write about. So I didn't have to figure out, okay, what am I going to write now? I just have the study or this interview to use here, which was very helpful. But they gave me really little time to write the book, simply because they realized that there was another book from another publisher coming out around the
Mm,
same time. And in this market, it's very important to be first.
mm.
So
Were you first? Did it
yeah,
come out first?
yes.
Oh, just. Mm.
And in days, like the days, maybe 2 days before the other book, but first.
So what was your process? Did you do the research and then write, or did you do what I would expect, which is you did the research, you started to write, you did a bit more research, you did another bit of writing? How did
No, I did something totally different, because at the beginning I thought I had more time. And so what I did, I kind of sat down and I wrote 1,500 words every day. And um, no research at the time, just kind
you?
of my thoughts. And I had, okay, this is what the chapter is about, and I need to write about this, and that. And I just did it. So I think the first draft, I wrote it in 6 weeks or something, because it was just it was easy in some ways.
Mm.
Um, and the research came later, and maybe it wasn't the best of process of like it wasn't the best way, probably because I had to rewrite everything anyway, and add the research and cut off some things and add more things. And maybe it would have been smarter to just write and do research like I would have done with my articles. But at that point I thought I had more time, so then I started doing after I had the first draft, I did some of the research, and then I rewrote, and then I did more research. And because I like doing the research part so much, I was always, oh, I need to read this book, and I need to interview this one more person, and then I'm going to be done. But after that, I had 10 more questions that I wanted to have answered, so I read another book. And
Yeah.
yeah, so
No,
um,
I can see that, because I think that all books are organic when you write them. You start, you do a bit of this, and then you change a bit. So you can't just have a plan and stick to it and go straight through, because things will keep happening. And then you have a day where you do some Niksen and you think, oh, I've had this idea, this idea, this idea, and then you go and plug them in. So it just keeps changing and growing and morphing all the time.
yeah, and then the others I say,
Yeah.
okay, no, this section needs, to be cut, but you also need to expand on this, and you need to put that fragment, up more closer to the top, and that one should go over there, and that part should go to the next chapter. And then I thought I didn't plan to do the highlights like the spotlight pieces at first, but then I started interviewing people and or just asking for stories from people, personal stories about parenting, about Dutch food. And there was this Lisa, Lisa and John Furlan. They wrote such a great article, great they contributed about being a couple that's gender equal. So it was so interesting. And if an expert told me something that wouldn't really fit into the book but was interesting, like the part about procrastination, I put it in a spotlight.
I like those. I thought the spotlights were really nice. I liked how they stood out and they could be read separately.
I asked for them to it was the idea that they would have a they would have a different color to the book, because that's how I saw it done in other books, and they did that. And I love how they also ask an illustrator to come on board and do this really quirky, fun illustrations that fit the book perfectly. It was amazing. And I usually admire people who have design skills because I have none. So it's really nice to have that artist on board as well.
Yeah. Yes, it's a lovely book. So I want to talk now about the nasty bit that people tend to forget when they hope to write a book, and that's what happens afterwards. All the marketing. So what has the publisher expected you to do? Because you've been everywhere. I've seen you in the Times. I saw that you were on the Jeremy Vine show. You really have. I think seen you in every paper I've picked up. So what's happened there?
So I think most of it was my marketing team at my various publishers. They've organized it, and especially for the Dutch market, where I don't have any connections, they've organized interviews for me on the radio and for Algemeen Dagblad and all the other papers, Magritte. Lots of it. Like I've done lots of interviews in the Netherlands and Belgium, but that was all set up by my marketing team, which was amazing. And then for the UK, some of it came through to me directly, like the editors or the producers found me on Twitter or looked me up or read about Niksen and kind of Googled my name, found my email address and reached out. And some of it has been set up by my marketing team as well. And also in the US, so the US version comes out in January. So I already have some podcast appearances set up, and it's all them for now.
Wow. So do you have more time to sit in your shiny new brown couch now?
Yeah, I think so. So so it was a little bit tricky with the pandemic and when schools closed in March, I think, or later. That was very hard. Now it's better because school is back, like kids are back to school, and so I have a little bit more time, and I'm not doing much writing at the moment. So it's okay, I guess.
Well, congratulations. It really is a fantastic book, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it. And I see some people say they're putting it on their Christmas list, and I'm not surprised. So I now would like to open to the floor, and I've got some questions that have come in already. So let me I think the first one came from Montaha. She said, I know that you can't plan for anything you write to go viral, but what could be the ingredients for a piece to go viral?
Yes, so actually after my Niksen article went viral, I sat down and thought, okay, what did I do now? I had no idea what happened. But then I realized, first of all, there's this huge interest in philosophies and trends from other countries, in the US and the UK especially. So Hygge was was chosen as the word of the year 2016 by, I think, Oxford Dictionary. So it was big in that year. And then we had Ikigai, we had dozens of other things. And then Niksen played right into that. So that was one reason. Another reason was that I think, as I mentioned, that people are done with wellness trends telling them that they should always be doing more and always be improving themselves. So you can't just eat food. No, it has to be organic, or it has to be from some faraway location, because it's a superfood that's really good for your health. And you have to spend hours reading labels in a supermarket because chemicals. And you can't just raise your kids. Now you have to be immensely involved 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, or else you're a bad mother. And people were just fed up with it. People just thought no. And I've seen lots of articles in book about taking back and reclaiming procrastination, or reclaiming laziness, or reclaiming boredom. All those things that we thought, oh no, that's not good for us. And we now see, no, actually they're great. They can be great for us. And so that was reason number two. And I said, when Niksen, I made the argument that Niksen might be a Dutch word, but the concept of doing nothing is universally human. And almost every language, in almost every culture, we have a word or an expression that shows doing nothing, or being lazy, or just relaxing and chilling in a positive light. So that was, I think, number three. And there was, yeah, so and at the time when I wrote it, people were so busy and overworked and reaching burnout and getting anxious and depressed because of it. And so writing an article, I hadn't realized that at the time, but writing an article about, no, let's just do nothing, it's okay, was really fit into that time. So you probably you never know what's going to become a trend, but you may see that people start talking about something. There'll be mentions on social media, there'll be articles in smaller magazines maybe, because once they reach the New York Times, it's over. But yeah, that's a sad truth. So listen to what people have to say, and what kind of the atmosphere is at the moment. So because you're going to see many articles, for example, about mothers drinking wine to kind of take the edge off parenting, and that was like, there were so many articles about that. So yeah, so just read everything you can get your hands off, keep your eyes and ears open, yeah, and try, like, don't neglect or ignore an idea just because you think it's not going to be interesting. It can be interesting, you never know.
Yeah, so it's about paying attention,
Yeah,
which is something that you have to do if you're going to be a good writer. Maggie wanted to know how you compare Niksen to Hygge.
yeah, a good question, and I get it a lot.
I bet you do.
Yeah, they're similar in a way that they kind of they're focused on coziness and well-being, and well, Niksen can be done anywhere, but mostly I think at home. It's just that I saw Hygge being a thing where you have to buy stuff. Like, have to buy sweaters, you have to buy candles, you have to make hot cocoa, which is great. But you have to go out and get those things, right? You have to do something, or maybe you have to set up the table for dinner, which is also important and great and nice, but it's not doing nothing. And I also think concept like Hygge, they're very embedded in the culture they come from. So it's very hard to kind of do it when you don't live in Denmark. Whereas, as I said, Niksen is more of a universal thing because everyone wants to be doing nothing in some ways. There's so many expressions about this, so many good things to be said about doing nothing, and each culture has their own sayings and expressions, but it all comes down to, yeah, let's work less and do nothing.
No, it's a very, very good answer. Really good. I'm just wondering if, Lisa has said, as someone who usually has a to-do list constantly on the go, but has recently been floored by the coronavirus, because Lisa's in her second week of the coronavirus right now, she's having a forced Niksen. Do you think it's worth exploring people's experiences of the virus and its Niksen effect?
Yes. So because it was when I wrote the book, everyone was so busy, but it came out on March 24th, so a week after they closed everything down in the Netherlands. And I was actually worried. Okay, now people are not going to be able to buy my book anymore because they can't go to bookstores. But when I started talking to journalists, they said, "Oh, what a timely book! This is the book we need right now." And I realized, yeah, because of course, depending on what your situation is, because when my kids were not in school, I wasn't doing much of nothing, to be honest. But I know of other people how they struggled to suddenly fill their days at home, and so people would bake sourdough bread, or they would make those huge cooking and baking projects, or do things like puzzles, or also like they would kind of really have to come up with ideas how to fill in their days. And yeah, as you said, it's a lot of it is like a forced Niksen that's forcing us to do nothing. And in many ways that's true, yes, because it's just a different ways of spending your time. Clara? Clara? And yeah, but the parenting expert Katarina Haverkamp, she's Dutch, and she told me, I really like what you're writing about Niksen because we need some time off to think about the future and to think what we're going to do after, and but especially who are we going to become. Because
Yeah.
I think, yes, because I've read so many articles about who are you going to be when this is over. And I think Niksen can really help us do that.
Yes, it certainly inspired me because I think it's much more attainable. And just reading your book has just made me think, well, if I can just have 5 minutes of Niksen, that's already quite a lot. And just sitting and doing nothing feels very different since I've read your book. Is there going to be a Niksen 2, or are you now on the lookout for another subject?
I don't think there's going to be a Niksen 2 because I'm mostly a parenting writer, so that's kind of my main thing. And I'm working on a proposal on a book on parenting, or actually more it's more of an anti-parenting book, in a similar way like Niksen was an anti-wellness book. Because one thing I really like doing is to kind of shift people's perspective on a matter, and many of my articles are like that. So when everyone was writing how they're not sharing pictures of their kids on social media because of privacy concerns, I did that too. But I wrote, I'm not sharing my kids' pictures of social media, not because of their privacy, but because it's the only space I can call mine. Or when everyone was writing about how women are mostly the ones following their spouses abroad, I wrote an article about men who are basically traveling spouses. And yeah, so that's kind of my favorite thing to do, to offer a news perspective on a certain topic.
I like that. I think that's a really lovely way of looking for stories, shifting perspective. I like that. Has anybody else got another question? Because I think I've done them all, unless I've missed one out. If I've missed one out, please will you?
Sarah is asking me to describe a writing day.
Oh, yes. Thank you.
Yeah. So I think I'm terrible because I don't write every day. And, no writing advice tells you I'll write every day. I don't. I write when I have an assignment to do or a book to write. But I do something writing related every day. And, reading a book, going out, even going shopping, taking the bus, sitting around, reading a newspaper. For me, all those things are not directly writing, but they can result in writing in a way that will give me an idea. And it doesn't have to be, a book about writing. It can be a novel where one sentence will remind me of something that in the end will lead to an article. So, yeah. And so my writing day. So I don't write every day, but I do something writing related every day. And in the morning, I'm very grumpy and tired, so that's not a good moment for me to write. And I've recently started, actually, I get up early and then I kind of help my kids get ready for school, and then I go back to bed, which is a much better way to spend my time, to be honest, in the morning. And then I get up, and I seem like a very lazy person, but that's not the case. So I'm going to maybe read a book. But I'm also going to go for groceries. I'm going to read something. I'm going to work. Maybe I'm going to pitch a few articles. I'm going to follow up on pitches. I'm going to kind of maybe cook dinner. I'm going to wait until my kids get home. I'm going to help them with homework, or I'm going to kind of give them food. So it's all sorts of stuff that I do, and not all of it is writing.
Yeah, so you're human, but you do try and live a writer's life.
Yeah.
Did you see the question that came through from Terry Ann a little while back? She said, "Many congratulations, Olga. You're an inspiration," which is true. As someone who's had a blog for 6 years, which is read worldwide still, I'm finding it difficult to stay inspired now that I'm not traveling. Having said that, one of my recent posts had thousands of views. Wow, Terry Ann, that's amazing. And should be an article. However, once I've finished writing something, I don't take the time to turn it into an article. So her question is, how did you stay motivated to turn blogs into articles?
So when I was still simultaneously blogging and submitting my writing to magazines, what I did was I pitched things that wouldn't fit on my blog. Because, with blogging, experts tell you to stay in your niche. So if your niche is traveling or the expat life, you kind of write that on your blog, because that's not usually stuff that's, especially for travel, except for travel, but that's not stuff that's going to be interesting to, now it probably might, but at that time it wasn't so interesting to magazines. So I pitched things, because I had more ideas that would fit on my blog. I pitched the things that wouldn't fit on my blog.
Yeah.
Maybe it was, science, or maybe it was food, because I didn't have recipes at the beginning. So I just pitched things that wouldn't fit on my blog. And then with time, I felt less and less motivated to blog for so many reasons, and I just stopped.
Well, that's interesting that you did. That's what you did. What I would always do is I made my blog posts like articles. So
yeah, and
I aim for articles. I don't aim for blogs per se.
I try to, because I also like to experiment with new writing styles and topics on my blog. I would also write blog posts that were more like articles.
Yeah, well, that's the way. I'm more mercenary than you, maybe. But now you've been doing extremely well. You had a fantastic deal. I'm not going to tell them what it was for your book, but does having a book now help you to earn more or charge more?
Not really. I mean, of course, I get the advances, and I'll get, hopefully, royalties from each books that I sell. But I'm not pitching. I mean, I'm pitching, but the market's really tough right now. So I've got an assignment right now, which is fun, and maybe I'll get a few more other ones. But I don't know if it's pandemic brain or what, but I'm just not thinking very clearly like right now. So it's getting a little bit hard to write, but I want to. Yeah, I want to write more articles, especially ones that are not connected to Niksen and or not directly about Niksen, but about things that interests me.
Do you think that now, or have you found yet that being a published author means that it's actually much easier for you to pitch? It kind of, your reputation is a given now, so it's easier.
It depends who and where, because the US edition is not out yet, and I write mainly for American publications. So I hope that will pick up after January.
Oh, interesting. That's interesting that it makes that much difference when you think that it's so global.
It does, but so with the UK, but it's still, I still get rejections and I still get silences. So I don't think much has changed, but I do get lots of media appearances and interviews.
Well, that's good. Monty wanted to know, do you think that whether blogs are still trending in general?
Good question. I think a few years ago I would have said yes. Now I think people either blog because they like it or because they like having a place to be called their own that they pay for, and they they maintain the blogs. But most of the bloggers I knew, they moved on to writing books. They moved on to kind of doing microblogging sort of stuff, so putting up stuff on Facebook. Some started doing freelance writing like I did. There are just so many blogs out there. I think it's much harder to get noticed at this point.
Yes, but what about pitching? Cecile wanted to know whether you have any tips about pitching to magazines.
Yeah, sure. So I found it's all about getting obstacles out of the way. So if you have an idea, okay, that's already good. That's one obstacle less. And then if you're able to find, the magazine you want to pitch it for, that's another obstacle gone. And it helps. It helps if you knew the editor's address, and they're not that hard to find as you might think. So you can sometimes Google editor, publication name. That's it. That's what. Or many of them share their email addresses on Twitter. Actually, I was surprised to find out. Say, pitch me at, this is my email address.
Interesting.
That's another thing out of the way, because if you already have their email address, writing them an email is much easier. And then a pitch is basically your idea in 2 paragraphs or less. And what's the idea? Why is it important? Why is it timely? Why is it a good fit for the publication? And why are you the best person to write it? And then you share your bylines. And you say, I was published here and there, and a blog is perfectly fine at the beginning. Yeah. Oh, and as for blog, the question about blog, I got to remind me that many writers turn their blog into a author's website when they feature their writing. So they have a blog, but you also have, here buy my books, and you can read my published articles here. So that's also a good reason to have a blog, simply because it's more of an author's website, and if you want to blog on it, perfect.
Yeah, that's a really good piece of advice, actually, Olga. How do you just take it? You just migrate your blog to a website, and you have it so that it's there.
Yeah.
And you keep adding to the blog on the website, so it's there as a bit of a shop window, so to speak. And then you have your links to the articles that you've had published, something about you and what you're working on. So yes, I think that works very well.
Yeah, so I think that's it. That's the pitch. And then you send it out and you wait. And sometimes they get back to you and sometimes they won't. So.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, I think as we've got to the end now, Olga, and it's been absolutely fascinating and very inspiring and rich with information. So could you just tell people the name of your website, your Facebook groups, and anything else where you would like people to perhaps join you?
So my website is olgamecking.com. I don't do much on it, but it's there. I have a Facebook group about Niksen. It's called the Nikseneers. Yeah, so I am a little bit more active over there.
So the Nikseneers, I shall just write this down here so that people can find it, because they might not know how that's spelt. Okay, I've written the Nikseneers. Oh, sent it to Josh instead of to everybody. Whoops. Oh, you've done it. Thank you.
I did.
Thank you.
I just did it.
Thank you, Olga.
Yeah, so and my book is now available in Belgium, the Netherlands, France, apparently Russia, and Poland, and Hungary, and the UK.
And it's got a beautiful cover, and it makes a great Christmas gift. And yes, you're right, Lisa. We are all faced with more Niksen than ever right now because of lockdown, and then if we get ill. So it's a very timely thing. Well, thank you so much, Olga. I do urge everybody to reach out to Olga if you've got anything more you'd like to ask, or to me. I do these In Conversation things every 2, 3, 4 weeks. The next one is in 2 weeks with Anisha Abraham, Dr. Anisha Abraham, who wrote Raising Global Teens, where I shall be talking to her about getting a book out during a pandemic and all the promotion that she's been doing. She really has been doing an amazing amount of promotion, and she's been on CNN and all sorts of things. So we've got that. And then in the new year, I'm talking to Rachel Kaysen about writing about finding your story. She is a life story accompanist. And then in February, I'm talking to 3 new writers of memoir about their methods in writing their memoirs as a panel. So do follow me and see what else I'm doing. A lot of the stuff I'm doing is free, and you can find it at joeparfitt.com/virtual-events. And thank you very much, Olga. Thank you all very much for watching. It will be put onto YouTube, and it will also be on my Joe Parfitt website. So you're welcome to tell your friends and watch it later.
Thank you so much for having me, and to everyone else, thank you so much for listening and asking amazing questions.
Thank you, Olga. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.